So Neil Marshall's Hellboy. Now, I didn't want to compare this to Guillermo del Toro's version. First off, yes, let's say it. The first two Hellboy films by Guillermo del Toro, which starred Ron Perlman in the role, were amazing. They were, I mean, they have their issues, a little flaws here and there, but visually they look great. I think it did an amazing job getting us into the characters, trying to get us into the character of Hellboy and the people he associates with at the BPRD. And just the creature design and just the production design of it all just looks gorgeous. Did a great job showing and not telling. And I didn't want to compare Neil Marshall's version to those films because I wanted to say, okay, this isn't the Ron Perlman version, this isn't Guillermo del Toro, but okay, fine, let's take it on its own. But I couldn't stop thinking about Guillermo del Toro's version because this version is literally like the polar opposite. Like, where Guillermo del Toro did a lot of, like, showing of its world and had all these great creature designs, made great use of the effects, this film is the exact opposite. This film has creatures that don't feel that inspired and a script that explains everything. Everything. Every single character in this film talks in a very expositional way of talking about their backstory and the plot and what they're currently doing, and we rarely get any moments of character building, which is really a shame because I think that David Harbour in the role of Hellboy, I think he's got a pretty good look to him. I think there are a few moments where I almost kind of caught him getting into kind of like the swagger of the character who could be, cigar chopping and punching people in the face and getting into barroom brawls and just drinking hard liquor and going into drunken stupors. I was starting to get like glimpses of that. But we rarely get that because this film is in such a rush to cram in way too much. There's way too much crammed into this film that we don't have time to have a drink with Hellboy. We don't have time to just kick back and get to know him and just have a little bit of fun. Even though the film has tons of these little, like, fantasy pit stops that it makes between trying to track down this evil sorceress. And they just feel empty. So, like, the story essentially is we've already established that Hellboy, he's in this world, he's working with the BPRD, with his adoptive father Trevor, who's played by Ian McShane, what a great actor who's just wasted here. Like, they start off the film with him narrating about this evil witch that they've got to stop here, and Ian McShane's narration is just amazing for this opening. Like, he just says, like, yeah, this is the story of King Arthur. Yeah, that fucking King Arthur. It's like, yeah, that's what I wanted my Ian McShane. And then he kind of goes away for most of the film, and then we have to have the rest of the plot explained by the other characters we have to bring into play here. We have now essentially the witch they're hunting here is the Blood Queen, played by Mila Jovovich, and yeah, she does an okay job as the Blood Queen. I don't know, it kind of just feels like she's kind of just going through the motions of this role. It kind of feels like, like the typical seductress here, except she's really not, it doesn't feel like she has to do like a lot of work and kind of like seducing Hellboy into her end of days plan. Like, it seems like she's got enough magic to take care of the rest of that. I wish she was like more cackling, more evil. Like she has a few moments where she's almost there. It's the same thing with Hellboy. She's almost there. She's almost got that craziness to her. But again, she just has to talk about the plot. She has to talk about, exposition and everything. But then we've got other characters who got to talk about their exposition. We've got Alice, who's known Hellboy since apparently she was a baby, and she has the power to punch ghosts out of people's bodies. But again, you won't get to see much of this because we spend most of the film just trying to catch up with her and get her connected with Hellboy. You have this soldier, Sasha Lane plays Alice here. Kind of a thankless role too. She doesn't really get to do much. She actually spends most of the film. What was I trying to do? Oh yeah, she actually spends most of the film as kind of like as like a connection to the spirit world. So she literally throws up spirits that can talk to the living. Kind of neat, but that's kind of most of her deal. She doesn't get to do as much ghost punching. And that looks really cool too. Like when she punches ghosts, she punches like spirits out of people's bodies and makes ghosts. That's cool stuff. We don't get to see much of it. Also, we don't get to see much cool stuff out of the soldier Ben, played by Daniel Day Kim, who who like he hates monsters, but he kind of has a backstory behind it with like scratches on his face. And like I said, this film has to spell out everything. So when we get to Ben, they literally have a moment. It's like, what's the deal with your scars? Like, well, I was with my unit in the jungle. It's like, oh, you too? This film has so much dialogue, and so much of it is pointless because it's always talking about like the history of monsters and what's currently going on with the plot and the Red Queen, and they never shut up. Even an elevator, there's a service elevator that looks just old and rickety, and even that talks too. Everything in this film talks so freaking much and with barely any character to it. And not to mention, that's just like the main characters. There's all these supporting characters that come out of nowhere. Out of nowhere. You have this league of giant hunters who have apparently been doing it for ages. We have to hear all about their backstory and then don't really bring them into play after that. We have the sisters of the evil witch who apparently are still around for some reason. They show up for like 30 seconds and then they're gone. Merlin pops up because King Arthur, and I guess Merlin's got to be there, but only for a little bit. There's an evil witch who looks kind of cool, but she doesn't do much either. And then you even have these giant city-destroying monsters that come out of nowhere, and you barely get any of them either, which sucks because they have a lot of the best gore in here. That, and you got a pig monster too, who also does it. This film has no time for anything. We don't even have time to enjoy Thomas Hayden Church as this golden age hero who was around during Hellboy's birth. He's completely wasted in this film. This film is just a mountain of wasted potential. All this cool stuff, and they do nothing with it. They don't elaborate on it. They don't allow these scenes to play out. And then when you get to like, okay, but that's just, talking about the story and the plot. What about the action? What about when Hellboy gets the gun? When he starts smashing monsters? Isn't that cool stuff? No. A lot of these special effects, here's the thing. Most of these fights involve Hellboy being smacked around and just shoved into walls and being beaten the piss out of. And when you have an actor who's got all this makeup on, and he has like, this big arm, and he's got to be tossed around by giants and giant pig monsters and all sorts of demonic creatures and vampires and all that, he has to end up being like computer generated visual effects. And there are a few scenes where it goes nuts with the visual effects, and it really doesn't look good in the compositing. In particular, there's a sequence where he's fighting 3 giants who are kicking around like a football, and he has to pick up a giant sword and swing at them. Now, this would be cool if it weren't for the fact that the camera was zipping all around the place, really revealing how poor the compositing is in this scene. It's just, it's bizarre. Like, and the thing is, like, nothing, because we don't spend a lot of time with the characters, none of their chemistry really works here. Everything feels so forced. Like, when the film actually does take time out of its day to actually make jokes, the jokes all fall flat on their face. It's just like, ooh, no. And not to mention, too, a lot of these jokes, they were added in ADR. So it really looks awkward seeing this stuff fail. Especially, the special effects of when Alice vomits up, like, ghost spirits, in particular, is so off-putting and bizarre that, like, and a lot of people pointed this out, too, and I don't think I'm alone here, it feels like this was, like, a Hellboy film made in, like, the early 2000s. And I know that Guillermo del Toro's Hellboy was made in 2004, but I guess, like, a better comparison would be, like, Van Helsing. It really does feel like something like Van Helsing, where the special effects aren't there, but it's trying to cram in so much. And the special effects can't keep up. The characters can't keep up. And you just feel nothing. Like, the only thing I was feeling about this film was just being awestruck with how terrible it is as like a train wreck that keeps piling up. Like, just when I think it's gotten ludicrous and it's kind of going to like settle down, it gets even more ridiculous. It crams even more characters in there. It makes up even more of its own logic. Like, characters just come out of the woodwork from random places that you don't even question it anymore. Just like, you give up just saying like, oh, who's that? Because they explain who it is and then they go away. But there's so many laughably bad moments in this film. Perfect example, there's a scene where Mila Jovovich's character of the Blood Queen is just walking around England, just shooting plague at everyone. And there's this news report that's coming out while she's doing this, saying, like, there's a plague sweeping across Europe, but we don't know where it's coming from. It's like, she's right out in the street. But it's like, we don't know where it's coming from. We don't know much about it. But we're pretty sure, and they have a graphic ready, like, it's going to consume all of Europe within, like, the next few days or something like that. It is just, it's so bizarre. Like, I almost want to, like, it's a bad film. It's definitely one of the biggest train wrecks of the year. But I almost want to recommend it just to see how insanely idiotic this film is. It is, oh man, it is just a train wreck of epic proportions that by the third act, I was just laughing my ass off at this thing. It is overblown, ridiculous, of just too many characters, too many plots going on, and none of it working at all. That it's just an astounding film to that degree. Yeah, it's just so much wasted potential. And it makes you, and like I said, I don't want to bring up Del Toro, but you can't help but thinking, oh, we could have had Hellboy 3, we could have had that trilogy, and instead we get this dud of a film. So for Hellboy, let's clarify here, the 2019 Hellboy, 1 out of 5 stars.